In June 2008, while eating pizza at our dinner table, my 15-year-old son, not mine. In June 2008, while eating pizza at our dinner table, my 15-year-old son asked me, a 26-year regular and reserve Air Force veteran, if it would be possible to send some pizza to troops serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our initial goal was to raise enough money to ship 300 pizzas. We emailed General David Petraeus and asked his permission to send pizza for July 4th, 2008. He answered our email in 12 hours and said, "Bring on the pizza party." DHL Express offered to ship the pizzas for free. Within 2 weeks, we had raised enough money to ship 2,000 pizzas. And since then, we have shipped 125,000 pizzas to troops. 4th of July 2013 is their 13th shipment of pizza to U.S. servicemen and women. Pizzas for Patriots now has the Guinness Book of World Records record for the world's biggest pizza party. 30,000 pizzas at the same time. Best I can, my heart is an open heart. As best I can, I let myself be human and try to lighten up life's load, whether tears or laughter flows. As best I can, oh yeah, as best I can. As best I can, my home is a kindness home. Like Abraham, where a stranger's always welcome. If they're hungry, then they eat. If they're lonely, they've got me. As best I can, oh yeah, yeah, best I can. Oh, what good can one man do? I'm just trying to find out. But I can only give what I've decided I'm about. As best I can, my world is a peaceful world, where all nations stand shoulder to shoulder, where we are equals before God. We are neighbors, one and all. As best I can, oh yeah, yeah, as best I can. Where we are children of one God, we are neighbors after all. As best I can, oh yeah, as best I can. I will do the best I can. story about a man named Fred Smith. This is a story nobody in this room would expect me to tell, but I can tell it kind of briefly. Actually, I think might be his own words. Fred Smith was studying at Yale University and wrote a paper. He was looking at the miniaturization of electronics and how dominant electronics were becoming. God bless you. This was back in like late 60s, right? So he's looking at the world and he's thinking, there isn't an efficient way of getting things around the world or even around the United States quickly in a reliable way. And manufacturing is speeding up and parts are getting smaller, so there ought to be some way to do it. And he wrote a paper in a business class in Yale University in which he proposed a concept that you could have one air carrier be responsible for an object from pickup all the way through to delivery. It had never been tried, right? Except for the post office. Operating its own aircraft, its own depots, its own stations, separators, staff from beginning to end, its own delivery vans, which would ensure a new level of accurate sorting, and he could guarantee a delivery time if they created a central hub where every single object that his company, he was imagining, touched would go through one place. Every airplane, every truck, every object would converge on one place at night, on each night, and then be dispersed to where it was going. And he got a C on the paper, by the way. But he never forgot the idea. And then a couple of years later, he founded a corporation, right? He started in Little Rock, but he couldn't get cooperation from the local airport. So he moved it to Memphis, and then he started running out of money because on the first day of the Federal Express Corporation's existence, they shipped 18 packages. And they had rented all these little planes, and they were giving it a shot. And he was actually running out of money and couldn't make payroll. And on a whim, no joke, flew to Las Vegas and gambled and won $27,000 to make payroll the following Monday. Okay, he was in the midst of looking for financing because his was a very, very big idea and needed. According to FedEx's own description, the most venture capital ever accumulated by an American corporation to that date. Okay, he needed venture capital from how many different companies? From 20 different companies to accumulate the planes. And it took 5 more years, by the way, to be profitable. And obviously now FedEx is, a global monstrosity, right? A giant, giant thing. The idea itself was a giant thing. Now, the reason I actually thought of telling you this story today is because I'm racking my brain and I'm trying to think of anything comparable where somebody started so big. Every example I could think of anything ginormous in the world that I could think of, except for FedEx, starts tiny. Coca-Cola started with a single soda fountain in Atlanta. The only other thing I could think of was the United Nations. The world was in crisis. The whole world came together, 200 plus nations, formed the United Nations all at once. That's a big idea. But can anybody else think of another idea that didn't start small?
Going to the moon.
That's a big idea. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, that's 3. Right? So the company that makes these lights, right? Where'd you get these lights? All right, Lamps Plus, right. So Lamps Plus, every component in there, is made probably in a different factory all over the world. They probably make 1 million of them. But at some point, it was one person's idea to go into the glass business, or the filament business, or the wire business, or the shipping business, just to get it across town, wherever, in Singapore, wherever it was made, right? Everything big starts small. So is there a bigger idea than, I started thinking, because I know we're talking about kindness, is there a bigger idea than a kind and peaceful world? And has anyone ever unilaterally imposed kindness or peace on the world? Yeah, people have tried, which brings me to this song I was about to sing, actually. United Nations tries. I would say, in some sense, the Allies tried in World War II. Dr. King tried, Gandhi tried, Jesus tried, a few other people tried, a few other organizations have tried. But it's a very big idea. And I'm not sure even any of those individuals or organizations would say that they can do it without, well, it reminds me of this Bank of America commercial I saw like 10, 15 years ago. I may have mentioned it at some point to some of you here. It said, we don't process 5 billion checks a day. We process one check correctly 5 billion times a day. And I thought, so do we snap our fingers and collectively make the world a peaceful and kind place? Or do we do the kinds of things that a couple did for me last night? My wife and I and a friend went to see a Tchaikovsky concert in Irvine outside. Anybody else go? Was that beautiful? Oh, was that fun? Oh my God. So as we're looking for a parking space in a parking lot the size of, Oregon, we're looking down a long road and we can't see if there's a space anywhere. And a couple has found a space. They're sitting in their car and they're sipping wine. Actually, they're sitting outside their car sipping wine. And they are doing this to us, strangers, 100 yards away. My wife says, I think they're telling us that there's a space there. And sure enough, they were. We pulled up, and alongside their car was an empty space. And I got out of the car and I said, I said to them, I think that's the most courteous thing anyone has ever done in a car-related moment in my 15 years living in Los Angeles, living in Southern California. Because you know how many times people will sit in their car while they know you're waiting, or you assume they're waiting. And they sit there and make a phone call and put on their makeup and have their lunch while their lights are flashing and their brake lights are on, and you're sitting there and there's 20 cars behind you and you're thinking, for God's sake, just reverse, These people did exactly the opposite. They thought of a stranger, right? And I'll tell you what it did? It made the Irvine Amphitheater a friendly place for Melina, Todd, and me for the entire evening. Right? We were welcomed by strangers who flagged us down to give us a parking space as we arrived, and it changed the place from madly huge and crowded to friendly. That's no small gift they gave. And it took them 2 seconds and cost them nothing. I think that's pretty special. Maybe we can never house the homeless, rid the streets of violence and crime, make the world a safe place for our children, but we can try. Maybe we can never feed the hungry, chase every warplane from the sky, do away with ignorance and hatred, but we can try. Oh yeah. Sometimes I feel so helpless, 'cause all I can do is my best. But even the longest journey begins with a single step. Maybe we won't always find forgiveness, or give our wildest dreams the wings to fly. Maybe we won't always love our neighbors, but we can try. always find forgiveness. We'll give our wildest dreams the wings to fly. Maybe we won't always love our neighbors, but we can try. Oh yeah, we can try. We can try. We can try, we can try. Oh yeah, we can try. We can try. Let me read you this story. You know, the trick of starting small, the real catch, at least for me, is credit, is pride. Right? Totally reasonable for you to expect it to make her day a little better, right? That's what you're really looking for. What you're really looking for is for it to land, for it to have an impact, right? What you do, let somebody go past you at the bank, yeah. Credit is the kicker. Some of you may have heard, be familiar with. I don't remember all 7 levels, but I remember learning in private school, in Jewish private school as a kid. There are 7 levels of generosity, in some sense, like 7 levels of holiness of generosity. The lowest, the simplest level of generosity being a gift that I give non-anonymously in person to a receiver non-anonymously, right? And all the way up to the holiest form of giving being anonymous giving, anonymous receiving, never knowing the impact, right? And we all know how much we want to know that we're known. That's not a failing, that's being human. You know, when I sing as best I can, I let myself be human. That's obviously a multi-layered statement. That can mean anything you want. But one of the ways we want to be human, in my opinion, we ought to allow ourselves to be human, is it makes sense to want to be known. And it makes sense to want to know the impact, right? You know, in the absence of an amazing example like the moon shot, right, where there was a demonstrable outcome, you've all heard me, or most of you have heard me sing and talk about the water songs, right? Does water know what it's done after it's done its part? In other words, once water has left the Grand Canyon, does it get to look back and take a picture and show its friends? Right? You notice, by the way, like one of the most common Hollywood fantasies, I hate to ruin like 75% of all feel-good movies ever made, but especially like it seems like in the last 10 or 20 years more of them. So one of the most common Hollywood fantasies played out is that the person, actually it really goes all the way back to It's a Wonderful Life, but one of the most common fantasies is everyone you've ever impacted, and even people who you never knew you impacted, are all magically gathered in a room and give you a standing ovation. Right? It's a Wonderful Life is so emotional. It's never been a satisfying ending to me, because George full-on sacrifices his own life time after time. He really, really does. I mean, that is a frustrating life he's lived. A lot of dreams unfulfilled. So our reward as the viewer is to get 150 people crammed into that little house cheering him, right? Now, almost nobody gets that moment. And I imagine the amount of kindness in this room, the number of acts of kindness committed anonymously every day by the number of people in this room is probably in the triple or quadruple digits. Is that a fair guess? I mean, come on. This is a nice room of people. Do you ever find yourself in a room with all the people you've helped today who throw confetti and cheer and bring a tear to the eye of everyone watching, and all of a sudden you're having like your Nobel Prize moment where everyone realizes the amount of good you've done? See, this is the kick. The kick is pride. Because basically no one gets that moment. Unless you're on CNN Heroes. Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah.
I literally can't watch it. I know I talked about it sometimes on my, was it Sunday night thing that I did? Sunday night, was it, or Wednesday night? Wednesday nights. Wednesday nights. I talked about CNN Heroes. I can't watch the show because so much pain in the world. And CNN Heroes, once a year, they pay tribute to 10 people who witnessed a need and met it. And they did it on such a spectacular level, so selflessly, and so successfully, however you define that, that CNN found them and put them on national television in front of an audience of celebrities who are usually cheered for doing nothing more than being egocentric and rich and attractive, let's face it. And heroes. People who are, but these people, you see, the magic is they never would have done it if only for credit. Because if you want to count the number of nonprofits in the world doing good work, there's almost certainly millions. And almost certainly 99.999% of them never have Jennifer Garner introduce them on a stage in Hollywood and congratulate them for being a spectacular human being. You don't get into that work for credit. You know, I had a songwriting mentor once in a class full of professional songwriter wannabes, and he said, "Anybody here for the money? Get out." You know, you're in the wrong business. You do it because it's yours to do. You even do it, I don't mind the selfish reason. You do it because oxytocin feels good. And because it's the cheapest serotonin reuptake inhibitor in the world. Do you have any idea how many people are taking prescription drugs of mysterious origin and effect and side effect? Massive cost, massive whatever else. Which all that does is increase the serotonin in your brain. And that's not hooey, which that narrator said. The cute voice was a girl, I think. Super adorable voice, right? Great little video. That's serotonin in your brain. I have no problem with it being the most selfish choice you ever made. It's the classic win-win. But credit, not going to get it. Let me read you this little story. There's a quote I read years ago that I've never let go of, and I looked up who he was who said it. A guy named Edmund Burke, who was an Irish statesman, second half of the 18th century, who said this quote that I've never forgotten. I read it probably in college. "Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little." Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Ambition tells you want to heal the world. You want to feed, as the song says, you want to feed all the hungry. You want to house all the homeless, right? The real act of kindness, the uncredited, unapplauded, unpaid, thankless, frequently, the real act of kindness is feeding the one person in front of you who's hungry. You will never, as I said before, you'll never see a headline about it. Right? So why do you do it? Because I think fundamentally, what we all want to know is that we're not alone in the world. Right? That someone cares. Maybe not all the time. But if you're walking down the street with a tear in your eye, to feel that somebody cares, I think makes a huge difference. Is that old George Carlin joke? We spend 9 months trying to get out of the womb and the rest of our lives trying to get back in. I think we are all looking for a hug, kind of at all times. And an act of kindness, a smile, that woman felt it, even though you'll never know. And you might not do it again if you see her. And I wouldn't. You know what I do sometimes? Sometimes I'll hold the door for somebody and they'll walk in and oblivious. And I'll say, "You're welcome." Completely undercutting the idea that I'm talking about today. Or I'll accidentally cut somebody off, and I'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and they'll just either give me a dirty look or just elbow me out of the way, and then under my breath I say, "Sorta." Anybody else do that? I'm less sorry now. I don't know. Anyway, so in the spirit of that Edmund Burke quote, this is a beautiful story. This is from a woman named Rachel Macy Stafford in her blog online. I was licking the envelope when my older daughter came into the kitchen. Who's the letter for? She wondered. I told her it was for Miss Amanda, her former preschool teacher who was also her babysitter 6 years ago. My daughter didn't remember Miss Amanda, but I did. In fact, I would never forget her. I was in a new city with a new baby and a traveling husband. Amanda came to our house a few hours a week and played with our children. I remember feeling homesick and alone, and so grateful for this young lady with gentle hands and a big laugh, who gave me a reprieve. Quote, Amanda helped me through a very hard time when you and your sister were little, I explained. Now I want to help her. She and her husband are trying to raise money to bring home an adopted baby from Uganda. My daughter asks, can anyone help, or is it just for adults? When I told her that anyone could donate, she literally ran to get her wallet. She returned looking sad. All that was left of her recent birthday money was one single dollar bill. My daughter did not hide her look of anguish. $1 isn't much, she concluded sadly. I held my breath. This child is a giver, the one who thinks nothing of giving decorated rocks or pretty seashells as gifts or offering her own favorite trinkets to sick friends. I was going to be heartbroken if she put that dollar back in her wallet, embarrassed to give such a small amount. I hoped that society hadn't already altered her uninhibited way of giving. Quote, do you think $1 will make a difference? She asked skeptically. I knew my answer had to be convincing. Just having turned 10, she was quite aware of what things cost, and I suspected she knew that adopting a baby was very costly. Quote, imagine if everyone Amanda knew gave $1, I said. Her eyebrows rose with interest. Plus, I said, receiving a note of support from a child she used to babysit for might mean even more to Amanda than money. Apparently my response was sufficient. My daughter grabbed a note card, jotted a message, inserted her dollar, and stuck the note card in an envelope. She carried it herself to the mailbox. A few weeks passed, and Amanda posted a message and photo on Facebook. I received a sweet letter from a child I used to babysit. It said, I hope this money will help to adopt the child, and there was $1 included. It brings tears to my eyes thinking about the compassion in sweet Natalie's heart. If she only knew the difference she made. I want to see how many people will participate in Natalie's dollar challenge. Touched by Amanda's idea, I shared her post with my friends. Amanda, a few hours later, wrote to inform me that $300 had been raised. I printed Amanda's message and showed it to Natalie the next morning. Remember when you asked if $1 could make a difference, I said. Take a look. As my daughter read Amanda's words, the most radiant smile appeared on her face. Quote, Amanda is now 300 steps closer to holding her baby in her arms, she said. After the birth of my daughter, it seemed like the evening news was more disturbing than ever before. It seemed like there were more child abductions, more bombings, more killings, more sadness, more despair. This is no place to raise a child, I thought to myself several times a day, to the point where I wondered what kind of world my husband and I had brought our child into. I wondered if there was any hope left in the world for her. And now 10 years later, I had my answer. Standing in front of me was the hope I had been looking for. I had just been looking at it all wrong. Angels are not divinely perfect beings dressed in billowy white gowns. Angels are imperfect human beings who lose their shoes several times a day, who get cranky when they don't get enough sleep, who dip their steak in ketchup, who leave the car door wide open when they come home. If society doesn't get to them first, pint-sized angels give to others with no reservations and no inhibitions. If they see someone who needs help, they help. When they see someone facing a mountainous challenge, they don't see the impossible. They see steps. And they are willing to take the first one, even if it seems small and insignificant. These disheveled angels know that hope doesn't come in the form of six-figure checks or expensive packages of gold bows. They know that hope comes in handwritten notes with misplaced commas and poor penmanship. They know that hope comes in the form of small, loving gestures. In one definitive moment, 10 years of my fears subsided and my hope for the future swelled. As long as a child's single-dollar bill can bring a loving couple 300 steps closer to bringing home their baby, there is hope. Let us not get caught up in the dangers of the world that are beyond our control. Let us refuse to believe there is nothing we can do to bring goodness into a troubled world. Let us not allow society to dictate how much we give, what we give, or who we give it to. If in this sometimes dark and hurting world a 10-year-old child can be an angel, there is hope for us all, because it is our children with their uninhibited hearts that hold all the hope this world needs. Gadget you got here. I feel like I need to sing a song today. If this is my last song, if this is my final day, if tomorrow I'll be gone, what do I want to say? If this is my last song, if it's my time to go, when my body's moved on, what will I have to show? Oh, but fortune and fame, they scatter to the wind. Things that make a name just don't matter in the end. But is the world a little more peaceful? Oceans and skies a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. If these are my last words for all of the earth to hear, all that I have ever been is about to disappear. If these are my last words, there's nothing that I need to say. I have only tried to serve. It's never been about talking anyway. So much hurt there is to heal, it's hard to understand. All I can hope to feel is that I am doing what I can. You know it's Is the world a little more peaceful? Oceans and skies a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. Have I given hope to the hopeless? Has a hungry soul been fed? Has a child stood a little bit
taller because of something that I said? Have I left a little kindness? Have I eased a little pain? If so, then I'm glad I came. For that, I'm so glad I came. If this is my last song, what do I leave behind? What do I pass on if I am out of time?
So, do we attempt to do 6 billion acts of kindness and receive a It's a Wonderful Life grand finale, Nobel Peace Prize and all? Or do we commit, each of us, one act of kindness and look around the room at all the other acts of kindness being committed and give a knowing smile and let that be enough? One thing I find interesting about the thinking small thing is, starting small thing, is how daunting being small seems when you read the newspaper and watch the news. My wife has a brilliant solution to that. She doesn't read the newspaper or watch the news. You know, in some sense, what's happening in Bali or Mali or Indonesia or Syria or wherever else you're worried about, or wherever else where somebody is paying somebody to make us worry about, is really what it is. In some sense, it's our concern, it's fellow humans. But in another sense, I don't know about you, but it really mostly just accentuates a feeling of powerlessness. And not smallness in a comforting, like God's got me way, but smallness in a way of, man, I cannot make a damn bit of difference. I mean, if the United Nations can't do it and international relief organizations can't do it, who am I to do it? And I really think my wife is brilliant. I also think she's hot, but she's brilliant. It's a brilliant solution. She doesn't hide her head in the sand, she's aware of things going on, but to focus on them to the point where they disempower the reader. That is, by the way, by design, in case you're wondering. The TV industry is not in the industry of entertaining you, and the newspaper industry is not in the business of informing you. TV business is in the business of keeping your eyeballs on the screen when the commercial starts. And the newspaper business is in the business of getting you to open the page and look at the JCPenney ad on page 3. As long as your eyeballs are on the page, they've done their job. Scary sells. Bloody sells. Sad sells. A newspaper with nothing but good news, you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's been tried. I'd buy it. But I don't know. I don't know if it would get drowned out by Fox News and CNBC. Be an interesting experiment if anybody has a couple $1 billion lying around. But in the absence of that, it is possible to stay centered and aware that the world, with a capital W, is not ours to change, but the world with a small w right in front of you is absolutely ours to change. Life with a capital L, no. Your dog's life? Or your child's life with a lowercase l right there in front of you? Absolutely. The world's feelings about itself and each other, humanity's peacefulness. Not so much. The peacefulness within your own home, within your own car, within your own family, within your own best friend, or right in front of you, or at office. Absolutely, as far as I can tell, that is entirely yours to positively impact. That's starting small. Not for the credit, not for the pay, not for the glory, not for the legacy, not for the headlines, but because we are a part of a family. And in our tiny corner of the giant house in which our family lives, we can make it a more peaceful, pleasant, beautiful, sweet place to be. Not just for ourselves, but for the people right in front of us. That feels like legacy enough to me. Thank you.